Joining us for the news review, we have Dr. Wisdom Dogbey. He is a financial analyst and he joins the conversation. Doc, good morning.
Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Indeed, City really looks different, right?
Pardon me.
What? It must be my birthday.
Sweetie looks different.
Because I don't know what
Sweetie looks different. Aha! Because I could also notice something. Something was,
Well,
so I'm not the only person, right?
You have company with that one.
Aha!
Thank
Because
you,
I could
Doc.
tell there was something. I don't know whether it's the hair or something. But
I'm just about to become rich. That's all.
Oh.
It's starting to smell on me a
It
little
meant
bit.
That's interesting. I thought you were
Please, no,
wealthy
I'm
already. Not even rich,
yet.
wealthy.
Not yet. But
Not yet.
I'm working my way towards it, So, yeah.
What you just said, though, reminds me of something. An old interview with Robert Nesta Marley,
Okay.
Bob Marley.
Okay.
And the
And
interviewer...
with you? Or something
No,
you
no,
watched?
not
Okay.
Bob Marley.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
But, and I know that sounded confusing,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And the interviewer, asks him, what do you consider, so they're talking about wealth and all of that, and he asks Bob Marley about riches, and Bob Marley retorts, throws it back to him, what do you consider riches? And then, there's a talk about it.
Yeah.
And then he talks about what he considers to be wealth or
Okay.
riches.
Okay.
And it had nothing to do with
Money.
money.
Yeah.
Because I know people who are wealthy. I mean, people say that, and sometimes people think it's not that it's bad to have money. It's not bad to have money. But there are people who are wealthy, who don't have friends, who don't have people around them,
Lonely.
who are not happy,
Yeah.
who are not joyful. So money definitely, it's a good thing, but it's not everything. Anyway.
I strive for abundance,
Oh, yeah.
Not just, financial, but people, family, experiences, things that
Exactly.
make my eyes come alive. But let's get into the newspapers this morning because this is the newspaper review session.
Well.
Do you want Dr. Dogbey to do that 1 minute review on any topical issue before we get into the newspapers?
I think we should
Okay.
we should let him do that, and
Okay.
then we'll get into the rest of it. So, Dr. Dogbey, over to you.
What's been on your
Perfect,
mind?
perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me again. I read a news article about my oil refinery bringing in a new board and stuff like that. And I just want to comment a bit on this, though I still need to do a bit more research here. I think that we need to leverage our visionary leadership in the nation to help plan on how we can deploy our natural resources and national assets, get the most out of them for the nation, and leverage that for optimal economic development. Tor has been bleeding for years now, and I believe it is as a result of mismanagement and also strategies that don't align well with the current demands of the market. Why did we not get central investors to rather invest in and also revitalize Tor? Its mandate is the same as Central, right? I believe. And I'm talking about a new Chinese refinery. And Tor hasn't been operating at full capacity. So why establish a new refinery when the current one is not even operating at full capacity? I'm personally skeptical, right, of the impact of any new board at Tor. What needs to change there is not only the board, but the overall strategy of running that shop. We need a mindset change, a new way of thinking with a focus on finding a better or optimal way to leverage, the refinery, make it profitable, which will expand the revenue base of the nation, and also reduce unemployment through job creation and diversify the economy. Has enough been done in research and development, right, to explore new and state-of-the-art, cost-effective technologies for refining crude? And I also think that it could require some form of PPP, right, public-private partnership. Government currently owns Tor 100%, from what I heard. What would it make sense, right, if you think about it, to explore full or partial privatization, right? It is becoming clearer and clearer that government is not always the best at managing these types of businesses in the country. So I think it will make some more sense if we consider some form of private partnership in Tor to help turn things around.
Yes, I mean, I can agree with you, Doc. But let's get to the newspaper, starting with the Daily Guide newspaper. On the front page, it says, President launches National Service Policy. No new taxes, Finance Minister assures. Arrest drivers charging illegal fares. NACOC staff arrested over cocaine smuggling. On December polls, Mahama promises military barracks in new regions. I'll start with the story of no taxes. The Finance Minister, it's on page 3 of the Daily Guide. The Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, has indicated that the government has no plans of introducing new taxes in its revenue mobilization efforts. According to him, instead of overburdening Ghanaians with the payment of more taxes, the government is determined to ensure effective tax collection while minimizing tax evasion. The sector minister made this known after the country reached a staff-level agreement with International Monetary Fund on its extended credit facility arrangement over the weekend. I'll add 2 more stories and then we come for your reactions, Doc, so that we can sum it up. President launches National Service Policy. So President Akufo-Addo yesterday outdoored a new National Service Policy to give the service a new focus and direction. The 10-year policy spanning the period between 2024 to 2034 is intended to channel the energies of service personnel towards national development goals. It aims to provide a structured framework for directing resources and efforts towards maximizing state interest and aligning with aspirations of service personnel. I don't know how this is different from what we're already doing. But my last story, NACOC staff arrested over cocaine smuggling. A female staff of the Narcotics Control Commission, stationed at the Kotoka International Airport, has been arrested in connection with the alleged interception of a significant quantity of illegal drugs at Brussels Airport in Belgium. Sources indicate that the suspect, a Dutch national, Preja Delge Bianca, was found to have concealed the cocaine around her waist, ingeniously disguised as undergarments, and used adhesive tape to secure the drugs down to her thighs and buttocks. This story has been in the news for some time, and KIA, came out with a press statement and assured people that their security is not to be something they should worry about. But Dr. Dogbey, what are your thoughts on these 3 stories?
Sure, thank you. I think that as far as the National Service Scheme new policy is concerned, I think this is a step in the right direction if it is different from what is going on today. I think that the National Service Scheme has always been about mobilizing and sending out young talents to serve in various sectors of the economy. And if this policy framework transforms the scheme into a more rounded capacity building and empowerment sector, that should be a welcoming news. Now, our education system sometimes trains us to pass exams and not necessarily to be ready for the realities in the workplace. And this is what the National Service Scheme can augment that effort instead of merely mobilizing and deploying graduates who sometimes sit idle because there is no much for them to do at some of their posting units or companies. The scheme itself is very important and it plays a substantial role, right, in the nation's development and societal cohesion. And it's because of this importance, that is why we should have a solid policy framework to get the best out of the scheme for graduates and for the nation as a whole. And Sweetie, if you think about it, our National Service Scheme fosters a sense of national identity. Folks with diverse backgrounds from different regions of the country, they are posted sometimes to different locations. They meet new people, they start learning about things like work ethics, shared responsibility, and also national pride. And the service also brings graduates from different socio-economic backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions together. By working and even sometimes living together, these graduates learn to appreciate and understand each other's perspectives, breaking down barriers and promoting social cohesion and integration. And this helps to build a more inclusive and harmonious society. And I think that a new policy could augment this further to build that capacity for the nation. One of the things that I got from my national service was a sense of civic responsibility and being an active Ghanaian contributing my quota right after school. It just instills a sense of that civic responsibility and also encourages active participation in national development. And so I believe a structured policy framework will make the scheme even much more impactful. That is, if it is rolled out and managed properly.
Right.
And some of us, we learned valuable skills, right, during our national service programs. So there is often training and also skill development opportunities. And so I believe if we implement a well thought out policy framework, to boost the benefits of the scheme, it could be a win-win situation for the nation and also for the graduates.
Okay. I'll do some final headlines in the Daily Guide and then move on to the Daily Statesman. Ghana's economy performing better than forecast. That is according to the IMF. Don't vote for Mahama, says Nicholas Omanie Champong. Okay. Emmy Africa Expo to boost business visibility. Tenants jailed for horrific attack, and work begins on Takrady Agona-Nkwanta roads. Those are some stories in the Daily Guide newspaper. To the Daily Statesman, on the front page, it says, New Dawn in National Service. That's a story that you just touched on. President launches policy for 2024 to 2034 on the National Service Scheme. Ghana secures interim debt relief deal with bondholders. Peace campaign strategy for 2024 elections unveiled. Bank of Ghana governor expects IMF $360 million to bolster Ghana's foreign reserves. I'll touch on that story briefly on page 6 of the Daily Statesman, and then Dr. Dogbey can come in, and then Benjamin takes over. So the story reads, the Governor of Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has expressed confidence about Ghana's foreign currency reserves becoming stronger with the disbursement of a third tranche, that is the $360 million from the International Monetary Fund, during a joint IMF, BOG, and Ministry of Finance press briefing. That's on Saturday in Accra, of the staff-level agreement on Ghana's second review of the 3 extended credit facility. Dr. Addison said he was optimistic about the board's approval in June. Performance Tracker, an indigenous initiative, Ahiagba, that story is on page 7. We've gone into this story of Performance Tracker throughout last week. Richard Ahiagba, Director of Communications of the NPP, has described the government's Performance Tracker as a groundbreaking initiative. He asserted that no previous government had ever implemented such a measure. The tracker was launched on Wednesday, April. Just gives details about the tracker. So there you have it. Those are some stories in the Daily Statesman. Dr. Dogbey.
Maybe before Doc comes in, and I'm sure Dr. Dogbey just might be curious. There are certain things that the president missed out on in his SONA that I was expecting to hear more of as far as the performance tracker is concerned. I mean, one of the crucial areas touted by this administration before coming to power in 2017 via election 2016 was corruption.
Right.
Where's corruption in the performance tracker? And again, yes, I mean,
it was just for projects.
Indeed, but there have been, what would you call it, institutions set up and all of that.
Yes.
Where is the report on those crucial areas to point to how corruption has been dealt with, the linkages? And some have mentioned, and I agree, the National Cathedral. It's a major, major project. People sometimes think that when we talk about the National Cathedral, I've espoused my thoughts on that and I felt at this point it was unnecessary. But people have built cathedrals over time, the French, others. So yes, we could have maintained it, but what was the quid pro quo? What were we getting for it? And we've sunk in there taxpayers' money. Where's the report on that?
Question for the gods.
So some of the things, apart from, I mean, since we're talking about emissions and all of that, I mean, my school there was something in there about my school which hadn't, so all of those things, yes. But we spoke about Agenda 111, and 2 of the hospitals were not even existent
and
there.
Even
the facts and the figures were not adding up. But these are crucial areas. And I think it's not a bad thing, really, a performance tracker. Under the Obama administration, they had what they called the Obameter.
Yes.
A meter or a metric measuring former President Barack Hussein Obama and what he had done, what he had not. I mean, those things are good, but let's not make it simply cosmetic or propagandist. Let's focus on something, in fact, something that can stand the test of time so that every administration that comes, for example, we can hold them to those same metrics rather than just something that is fluff, that is for and that doesn't serve any purpose. We end up spending more taxpayers' money to keep up some of these things that really don't do anything.
Right. I mean, Ben, this isn't the first time they're launching some sort of tracker for a manifesto. But, Dr. Dogbey, what are your thoughts?
This is an upgrade on there was something
the
they
manifesto tracker. I think delivery tracker or something of the sort.
They had the delivery tracker.
Yes. And they say that it's specifically for
it's an upgrade of the delivery tracker.
But the projects that you're implementing, came from your manifesto. So how does that reconcile? Dr. Dogbey.
Ben took the words out of my mouth, right? A performance tracker without corruption metrics, that is a joke. It's not a performance tracker, in my opinion, right? It has to be all-encompassing so you can say it's measuring every aspect of how government performs. So with that said, I would digress. I will swap that and go to the $360 million that we received. As far as our debt situation is concerned, right, I think the fact remains that we're making progress, right? But we've also seen some snags here and there, at least in the short term. But I think that Ghana remains in crisis in the long haul, right? And it will take a while to fix, even for the next administration. So I tend to agree with His Excellency President Akufo-Addo when he said some time ago that Ghana needs to find a good balance between meeting the expectations of Ghanaians and at the same time committing to the conditionalities of the IMF's 3-year extended credit program. The IMF chief for Ghana, Stefan Rudet, said that our performance has been strong under the IMF-backed program with most quantitative targets met. And he also mentioned that monetary policy has remained under tight control, which is helped to reduce inflationary pressures rapidly. I must admit that I will need to catch up on some of these metrics, but I would say that all of these sound quite well. However, it doesn't seem to reflect on the economic situation on the average Ghanaian, at least at this time. And again, I'll need to catch up on the latest and the greatest on the specific requirements. But the more I think about how we got here, I ask myself the question, how can we properly manage the debt level of the nation to avoid this disaster in the near future? And in my opinion, one approach is through continuous fiscal discipline. On the fiscal front, sweetie, IMF mentioned that we're on track to achieve a fiscal primary surplus of about half a percentage points of GDP in 2024. And that spending has remained, they mentioned that spending has remained within budgetary limits. Again, all of this good stuff, we have to ensure or maintain that kind of a fiscal discipline by ensuring that the government is spending sustainably. But I worry that old habits will die hard here. What is the assurance that government will be fiscally responsible this election season? And I also think that there should be more structural reforms to promote productivity and enable competition in the economy. And I'm talking about measures to improve the business environment, right? Encourage investment, strengthen the labor market. This is not to say that we will not succeed in our efforts to restructure our debt in the long term. I think we will. I like to remain hopeful that Ghana will eventually come out strong again, knock on wood. I believe that with commitment and diligent implementation of sound policy reform, our nation will eventually recover. I don't expect the recovery to be quick, but I believe we can eventually get there and probably achieve our growth projection of that 3.5% forecasted by Fitch Solutions, and also end-of-year inflation target of 15% as forecasted. But it would take discipline and commitment.
Well, I'm joining you in that hope, Dr. Dogbey. Hopefully we see a Ghana that is better. Benjamin?
I will go into the Daily Graphic newspaper now, and there's Graphic SIC Step-Up Partnership. Odo Basin, encroachment hampers detention ponds project, that story on page 13. Then 50 years after establishment, the banner headline, NSS gets first policy, 50 years after establishment. It goes on and on. And then other stories I'll likely take sneak peeks at. Lagos marks 10th anniversary of Chibok kidnapping, the Chibok girls.
Yeah.
Then NDC demands probe into stolen biometric machines. Donald Trump's hush money, a story I followed. A criminal trial opens in New York. And our courts to cap or not to cap. That's a story there. It's by Rodney Nkrumah Boateng. I know his take on some of these matters, but it's still an interesting read. You could get to that on page 10. He cites how when news emerged recently about 8 lawyers and 12 judges shortlisted for the Court of Appeal, some predictable complaints came to the fore about the president packing the courts. But honestly, I feel at some point we may need to have some system capping, else, because without a ceiling, you can also have a president who will come and, and things might be problematic, both from the Court of Appeal. In fact, the higher courts, the High Courts, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. But let me start from the start. A 10-year national policy that sets out a broad framework for transforming the National Service Scheme has been launched. The policy framework shifts the focus of the scheme from just mainly mobilizing and deploying graduates into various sectors of the Ghanaian economy into a more holistic capacity building and empowerment sector. The policy document has become necessary because the NSS has operated for years without any formal policy guidelines. Therefore, the policy document represents a paradigm shift to ensure that service personnel are adequately prepared to transition to the world of work. President Akufo-Addo launched the policy known as the NSS Policy 2024 to 2034 in Accra yesterday with a call on all to embrace the changes and focus on the new face of the NSS. The same NSS that some have been given options about. You remember the vice president has said that it could be optional and all of that. I don't know how Dr. Dogbey will feel about that being optional, as he was talking about. I think he made mention of something related to that. Let me go to page 13, and then you come in, then I'll do some other stories. So, Odo Basin, encroachment hampers detention ponds project. Efforts to construct detention ponds, a major intervention in Accra floods control project upstream of the Odo Basin, are being hampered by the encroachment of suitable lands by some private individuals. A detention pond is a large depression in an urban landscape that is designed to manage stormwater runoff by storing it and releasing it gradually until it is completely drained. Although 6 sites were identified in wetlands and watersheds, mostly located in areas such as Abokobi and Damfa in the Ga East Municipal Assembly in the Greater Accra region, the government could not acquire those lands. The coordinator of the Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project, that's the GARRET project, Dr. Kwejo Ohene Safo, who discloses to the Daily Graphic, said this crucial ecological resource had been taken over by traditional authorities and private developers. You know, this whole bit about, sometimes that's where it's a sticking point. Chieftaincy, land, of course, per the law, we know the role they play, but sometimes it becomes problematic, whether it's Galamsey you are talking of or some of these incidents. And here we are, traditional authorities and private developers being pointed to. But if Accra floods, all of us will complain.
Yep. Dr.
Dogbey, quick thoughts on these?
Ben, I missed this one about encroachment affecting the pond project, and I don't have enough color into the story. However, I have come to realize that encroachment generally has been an issue hampering development in Ghana in various areas. It can limit the availability of land, just as you read, or space for development projects such as this one, and it takes time to rehome or relocate the encroachers. Then also dealing with encroachment involves legal and regulatory complexities, sometimes in Ghana, and the slow pace of addressing this, even in the law courts, it doesn't make the situation any much easier, right? Government agencies, ministries, and the contractor, all of them, they must follow that due process, to address this type of encroachments, which often involves lengthy legal procedures and negotiations before you even eventually evict the encroachers to get the work done. And sometimes, too, the encroachment can disrupt existing infrastructure and services. When unauthorized structures or settlements are established in areas that are designated, for instance, for utilities, transportation, or even public facilities, for example, I think it can hinder the proper functioning and also further hamper projects like this one. We have an environmental impact here as well. We have social impacts, economic implications, and also safety and risk concerns when it comes to dealing with such encroachments, as we often see in Ghana, and how that impacts development. However, I think that we should be hopeful, right? This can be cleared hopefully pretty quickly to pave the way for the work to be completed. All
right, let's get into some. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
All right. So there's, as for the NDC's demand of a probe into stolen biometric machines, I think we're pretty familiar with that story, and I've heard Fifi Fiavi Kwete expanding on that. I know, as far as the EC is concerned, some people have been pointed to, some interdictions or arrests have been made. We'll see. Now the question is, what information have they played with? What will be the consequences of that? Those are questions.
They say that there's no relevant information that could influence the election. So let's see how that all plays out.
Yeah. Lagos marks 10th anniversary of Chibok kidnapping. 10 years have passed since that fateful night when darkness descended upon the Nigerian village of Chibok. On April 14, 2014, Islamic extremists stormed the government girls' secondary school in the Chibok community in Borno State and abducted nearly 300 girls as they prepared for science exams. On Sunday, campaigners and those affected by the event gathered in Lagos to mark the 10th anniversary of the kidnapping, calling for the nearly 100 girls still in captivity to be free. The Chibok kidnapping was the first major school abduction in the West African nation. Today, survivors like Grace Dauda and Rebecca Malum share their stories of resilience amidst the trauma. You know, a lot of these girls were unfortunately violated. Sometimes I find it hard to use the R word. They were violated. Some came back pregnant. Others have been pregnant, had children, and all of that. These were children. They themselves were children. And you know, that hasn't been the last. In fact, very recently, there was another one, I think late last year or early this year. And it's just cold comfort. And some have criticized the Nigerian authorities, government and government out for their handling of the issue. But it's a really depressing.
I mean, 10 years on, are they dead? Are they alive? What is the state of mind?
Hundreds still remain with.
And what's even the life of those who returned? You know, it's not enough to just say you're celebrating or you're marking 10 years of the return, or of these girls. There are still some more. Or what is the Nigerian government doing? To ensure that they're still trying to pursue these terrorists and return these girls. Each life.
Right.
It's important. So what are they doing? I was following the news yesterday on BBC. Dr. Dogbey wants to say something.
No, I was going to say I'm glad that these girls were rescued and returned successfully. Most of them. There's still some that are still left there, right? Ben, you rightfully said they were abused in various ways. 10 years down the lane, what have we learned as a continent? And what measures have been put in place to prevent such acts of terror, sadly committed against children? I think more has to be done because even recently, just as you mentioned, I think I heard about 130 students kidnapped somewhere in Nigeria again. It's just saddening that we keep hearing about these terror groups always targeting innocent children in Nigeria. I don't know what effort or investment the government of Nigeria has been spending to try to fight these acts of terror and restore security to the people up north. But I think more work has to be done because evidently the terror has continued unabated. And if you lived in that area of Nigeria as a parent, you are not 100% guaranteed that your child will come back home when they go to school. And it's an unfortunate ordeal that anybody, including the parents over there, have to deal with. I think the Nigerian government may be able to do more, right, to collaborate with stakeholders, including regional organizations, local communities, and international partners to solve this problem once and for all.
Right.
Hopefully, they would invest more in training and also equipping of their security forces, to effectively fight these terrorist groups and decimate them. They need to enhance intelligence gathering, also, and share capabilities to pick up the activities and movements of these terrorists even before they are able to strike.
Right.
And I'll also call for a more regional cooperation because if we allow these terror cells to grow unchecked in one country, they could be empowered to expand their operations across the sub-region. So it may need some more cooperation through organizations such as African Union and ECOWAS. And I think that collaborative efforts such as intelligence gatherings and also conducting joint tactical military games and operations in those areas where the terrorists operate, that could actually help drive them away from the region, hopefully. And I think we need to start looking at the root cause of such terror acts in Nigeria and also in the sub-region. Is it socioeconomic, ideological, whatever political factors, and address it right from the root?
Right before we go, I mean, I'm not going to read the story. I'm sure you're familiar with the death of two in the Temamansia area. Two people, Joseph Ajete, 22, and Christopher Amu, 38, among, a group of people on a street procession as part of this year's Belejo festival, and a misunderstanding between the celebrants and some Navy personnel, two of them shot. I always say that, of course, per the law, even if someone slaps you, your reaction must be proportionate to what the person did. You can't say someone slaps me and then you go for, what would you call it, a pneumatic drill and hit the person, or a gun. So it must be. No one is saying that it is right what the people did, the throwing of stones and the rest, but was the reaction what it ought to be? And how come in this country we're always saying we're firing warning shots, but the warning shots end up, killing people? You fire warning shots into the air, right? It's like the Ejura incident, if you remember. Warning shots, yet we saw someone on one knee aiming into the crowd. What was that? Was that a warning shot the person was trying? I don't know, but and the families are demanding justice. They say they want justice. Justice must be served. Those who fired the shots must be fished out and prosecuted. On both ends, those who are guilty or culpable, those who were throwing stones and agitating, and those who shot, both parties ought to be. We can't continue like this because, you see, it's someone else today. It could be you tomorrow. That's how life is. Anyway, those are my final thoughts. Dr. Dogbey, we have to go. Any final words in some 20, 30 seconds, and we have to go.
I just want to say my thoughts and prayers to the families of those two young fellas that we lost, right? But to your point, justice should not be carried on the streets of Accra or Tema. Justice has to be done in the law court. So let's keep our fingers crossed that there will be proper investigation into this, and those who are at fault will be brought to book.
Doc, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. We're grateful. We wish you the best of the day. Thank you for joining me, sweetie Abochi. Dr. Wisdom Dogbey, of course, is a financial analyst. Now, right before we go, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us to bring you this segment. They're offering prostate screening for free if you're a man, fertility screening for free if you're a woman. Their branches here in Accra, Sprintex, opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Energy State, Tema Community 22, Tichiman Hanswa, and Esiaman Zama. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But up next, we serve you sports. Do stay.